Welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. Jamie Lynch, Tyler Zulli with you on this soon-to-be very wet Friday. But welcome into a fun time again, Phillies podcast, which is, of course, brought to you and presented by our friends over at Bet365. It's never ordinary at Bet365, and there's tons of great things going on, from odds boosts to same-game parlays to futures. They got a ton of great stuff happening, and they're the kings of live in-game betting. So check out Bet365. Download the app or go to the website and use promo code PHLY365 when you sign up, and you can get $150 in bonus bucks when you lose your first $5 wager. Tyler, it's been all of, barely 9 hours since I've seen you last. So what's happened since you went to bed and woke up again?
Yeah, I think at some point, if you see me enough in 24 hours, you get hazard pay. Unfortunate to your health to have to see me this many times in a row. What's happened was probably the same thing you did. We got done, we went to bed, I woke up, and we're back here. Yeah. And I went to bed pretty happy last night. I woke up pretty happy this morning because this feels like the beginning of this team's return to form.
It does. The Diamondbacks, as we talked about last night, were red hot. Chase Field is always a difficult place to play for the Phillies, kind of like San Francisco is in a way. It's just like one of those house of horrors. You're coming off a Dodgers, 5-1 series or season series win versus them, where you kind of dominate what was perceived to be the best team in baseball. You're seeing the ball fly over the fence again. You're getting some doubles. You're getting 14 hit games, and some of the pitching's been really good. So it does feel like this is a corner being turned, and you kind of set yourself up perfectly tonight with Zack Wheeler. So we'll get into that, but it does feel good again. It feels fun.
Yeah, and last night after we got done, I tuned into our counterparts.
So did I.
And the one thing that stuck out to me was they were talking about the pitching matchup and how yesterday, and we talked about this plenty throughout the year, like there's very few times where you look at a pitching matchup and you go, okay, the opposition has the upper hand over the Phillies because of how good their rotation's been.
Sure.
Last night was one of those examples where the Diamondbacks, and the lines showed you that the Diamondbacks were favored, the Phillies were the dogs, that the Diamondbacks had a pitching advantage over the Phillies last night. Montgomery, I know, had a slow start to the year. He was injured, starting to kind of round back to form. The velocity's not entirely there, but if you say just on paper, who would you rather have, him or Allard? You're going to take Jordan Montgomery.
Sure.
And when, I think that there was a little bit of concern amongst the Diamondbacks fan group because of the fact that you lose that game. And now the Phillies are positioned to go with the big dogs. It's Zack Wheeler tonight. It's Christopher Sanchez tomorrow. It's Aaron Nola on Sunday. And like you guys talked about last night, I'm not sure if the Diamondbacks have announced a starter for
They
today's
haven't.
game. So
I looked again this morning. Still, it's TBD.
The momentum swings substantially in the Phillies' favor after taking game one. And now you go to your ace in game two, and two guys, over the course of the weekend that have been pretty darn good this year.
Yeah. So the way it goes down in my house is my daughter Skylar, 5.5 years old, Phillies sicko already. I love it.
It's so amazing.
She asks every morning. So, usually over breakfast and coffee, I have to give her the Phillies update. And the past 2 mornings has been great.
Yeah.
I got to tell her about Kyle Schwarber hitting 3 home runs the other night. And we'll get into his season, which is just absolutely incredible. And then again this morning, I got to hit her with hey, Sky, guess what? Trey Turner had a big 2 RBI single last night and hit one hard to right field. JT sent one over the wall for the first time since May 23rd. And I hit her with all these stats, and she was just like, yeah. And I'm like, I know. The Phillies are fun again. It's pretty cool.
She is growing up. Your kids are growing up in a perfect time to be a Phillies fan.
Yeah.
Because I think there was almost this like rite of passage as a kid growing up that the team is going to stink for the first, however many years of your life. And it was actually funny. I posted this when my wife and I announced that, we were having our firstborn, and my dad was born in 1963. It took till 1976 for the Phillies to make the playoffs for the first time in his life. He was 13. When I was born in 1993, it took the Phillies until 2007 to make the playoffs for the first time in my life. I was also 13. I don't think my kid's going to have to wait that long to see a playoff team. Your girls are
No.
growing an awesome time where like they're really starting to get a feel
Oh, yeah.
how they like they're understanding the game and having fun with the game. And they've got this team right now that they can grow up with. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Harper and Trey Turner are going to be with her until she's like, 13 years old, which is pretty wild to think about. But yes, it does feel it's nice to be smiling doing a show again. And shout out to everybody in the chat that's joined us already, Matt Deckert and Steve. Happy to have you here with us shortly after a quick turnaround last night. But there is a lot of good stuff to get into with this team right now, including a magic number, Tyler. We have a magic number.
What's
41.
I was going to say, what's it like, 50?
41. So seems pretty obtainable, doesn't it?
I mean, I certainly think so, especially considering, listen, this team suffered its worst stretch of the season over the last six series, over the last 4 weeks.
And they have an 8-game lead.
And they lost a half a game.
It's pretty wild.
Over that awful stretch. And like we said, it feels like they're starting to come out of this a little bit. The baseball has been significantly more palatable, even in the losses. I mean, there was only one over the last 5 games, but even in the loss to the Dodgers, it was a more palatable baseball game. The fact that they lost a half a game and they're back up to 8. And listen, the Mets are surging and the Braves are playing really ugly baseball right now.
Well, funny you mentioned that, Tyler, because do you know what today is? For the first time in 784 days?
784 days. I don't.
It is the first time the Braves have not held a playoff spot in 784 days.
That's unbelievable. Now, I will say this.
Right?
It's really difficult for you to sustain an entirety of a season when your MVP, your former MVP, is
sure,
on the
absolutely,
entire year.
A Cy Young candidate.
Your Cy Young candidate is on the shelf for the entirety of the year.
Absolutely, we'd be bitching and moaning.
And like you've brought up, countless times on this show throughout the last 6 months, they were legitimately, statistically, the best offense in the history of baseball last year.
There had to be a regression.
To regress is almost normal. The way that they've regressed is more than I expected. I expected them, like you said, they were going to regress. They were going to come back down to earth a little bit. But Matt Olson has struggled for a bulk of the year. Orlando Arcia really struggled to begin the year. Austin Riley's numbers.
Riley had some tough patches.
Everybody's numbers are down across the board. It's to a point where you what is this just not their year? Because they're too talented to play this poorly.
Yeah, they're loaded.
As long of a stretch as they have. It's just strange at this point that they're struggling as mightily as they are.
Well, if you didn't hear that, that's 784 days. The first time the Braves have not held on to a playoff spot. That is absolutely bonkers. And just goes to my theory that Alex Anthopoulos is a war criminal and belongs in prison. All right.
Darn good GM. Pretty good at his job.
I mean, some would call it he's very good at his job. I would call him a war criminal that belongs in prison.
Whatever helps you sleep at night, James.
Yeah. It's just how I get through these things. Tim Kelly had a story on Phillies Nation. I wanted to run this by you, and it's funny. He called Kyle Schwarber one of the best signings in Phillies history, and I don't think there's really, when you look at the production per dollar return on that, because he is cheap. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But what's funny is I immediately started thinking of best Phillies signings ever.
Sure.
And the first place, of course, you have guys throughout history that are great. But when you think about Zack Wheeler and the contract he just got out of, that might be the best. I mean, you got a Cy Young candidate severely undervalued in terms of the market for 4 years. Bryce Harper and his AAV and what that is going to bring this club.
And it continues to get better as the years go on.
And Trey Turner, if he ends up being a legit top 5 NL MVP for 6 or 7 years of his career, that is also going to be there. So Tim's point is right about Kyle. But when you think about that group of 4 signings at one time, it's pretty wild how successful all 4 of those are.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, I know that the mid 2000s or 2010s, excuse me, were rough for this organization. They were some bleak years.
Sure.
But I think you have for this iteration of the Phillies, like the last 20 years, there's one guy to go back and thank to change the course of all of this. Now,
John
granted,
Middleton.
well, there that's another one, but
Cha-ching,
like
cha-ching,
now,
cha-ching.
granted, they had a lot of homegrown success with that team from 07 to 2011 with Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, Carlos Ruiz. All of these guys, were homegrown successes. But you got to go back a little bit even further to change the course of this franchise, how they
Jim
were
Thome?
perceived. It's Jim Thome.
Yeah.
Like Jim Thome changed the course of this franchise by
did.
willingly signing with an organization that was not on the map the way that they have been over the last 20 years. Now, again, I know 2013 through 2017, 2018 was a little bit.
We don't talk about those years.
But you were able to parlay Jim Thome into homegrown success, into Raul Ibanez, into a second Cliff Lee signing, into being willing to trade for Roy Halladay, into being willing to trade for Cliff Lee the first time. And then, of course, you get some diamonds in the rough. Nobody expected Jason Worth and Shane Victorino to be as good as they were. But I think this all starts, this mantra of a big market club, the mantra of willingness to sign money, the mantra of Bryce Harper wanting to come here and recruiting guys and being able to sign Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber and Trey Turner and Zack Wheeler. I think it goes all the way back to Jim Thome.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you needed and Citizens Bank Park, really. I mean, the reason Jim Thome was brought here was because they needed butts in the seats in their new state-of-the-art stadium, which ended up working out pretty well for them. But you're right. I mean, when you look at the last 25, 30 years of the Phillies, I think the two most monumental pieces by far are Jim Thome and John Middleton. And I wasn't bullshitting you there when I said John Middleton. When he kind of seized majority control and started throwing around the big boy Yankee and Dodger bucks.
Sure.
I mean, that changes everything. So I think you're right on the field. Jim Thome was kind of the Andy Reid for the Phillies, like the pivotal swing point that changed things. And then I think John Middleton took it to a new level. But Kyle Schwarber, the year he's having, I joined the PHNX show yesterday with Jesse Friedman, and he asked me about Kyle Schwarber, and I was like, it is bizarrely an amazing year. I was like, he is killing it as a leadoff hitter this year. He learned how to hit lefties, and that's changed everything for him. Now, when June Schwarber hit, his power number surged, and then you're seeing it again here in August. July was a little bit of a dip, but the guy is incredible. Tyler, he is now, after this stretch, he is third in the NL in on-base percentage and fourth in home runs. His season is unbelievable. He's reduced his strikeout rates, his on base is up, his average is up. He's hitting lefties. He's maintaining a fine enough power, streak through all of it. So, Kyle Schwarber, what a season, man! This is he's low key. Him and Nick Castellanos, because Trey and Bryce were so good for like a 2-month stretch.
Sure.
Kyle and Nick are really kind of almost getting forgotten about what great seasons they're having.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to some of the numbers, he's third in walks this year. He's 12th now across baseball in OPS. To put it into perspective, he's at 899 in the OPS. That's what his OPS currently is. Bryce Harper is right in front of him. Excuse me. He's at 909. Just some of the names that are ahead of him this season: Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, Bobby Witt. Now, and then then you've got some guys who have gone on some massive tears. Is
that the MVP list you just named?
It's pretty darn close. Rafael Devers is on that list. Vladimir Guerrero, who I know we're going to talk about later in the show, is on that list. And Bryce Harper is ahead of him. It's a great group to be included in for a leadoff hitter. And I know we've had the conversation of traditional leadoff hitter versus Kyle Schwarber.
Sure.
Everything that Schwarber has done this year has been to the
traditional leadoff hitter.
Right, been to the betterment of the Phillies. His on-base percentage is, what'd you say? It's 390 something right now.
Third in NL.
He's third in the league in walks with 83. His strikeout rate, he's seventh in the league in strikeouts. He has 133 strikeouts. I don't think he's going to strike out 200 times this year, which would be the first time as a Philly he doesn't strike out 200 times in a season. He's hitting over 300 against lefties, which, as you brought up, has been so impactful to his success this year. Everything that he has done has been a buoy for this team when guys have gone through ebbs and flows. And as you said, he and Nick Castellanos have almost been unsung heroes of this offense because, Turner surged at a point, Harper surged at a point, Bohm surged at a point. These two guys, Castellanos as of late, like the second half of the season so far, and Kyle Schwarber for a bulk of this year have kind of been buoys for this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give credit to Anthony Sanfilippo. I was just reading an article by him on Crossing Broad, and it was about Nick Castellanos. And we talk about Schwarber kind of getting forgotten about a little bit too. Nick Castellanos is kind of the backbone of this team right now. This has been a little over 2 months of really consistent play out of Nick Castellanos. And when you look at his slash line over those, 9 or so weeks, it's remarkable. And what really jumped out to me, Tyler, on the story, we always think, Nick Castellanos, low and outside breaking ball, you can get him to strike out and bite. Nick Castellanos, his strikeout rate he's striking out less frequently now than Brandon Marsh, who, as you pointed out the other day, is striking out at 37.2% of
yeah. So by the way, I got pointed out that I actually used the wrong math. So it's only like 33% because I was using at bats and not plate appearances.
Well, this is 37.2% of plate appearances now.
Oh, it is now. Okay.
This is from Anthony's article. Yeah. Okay. Schwarber's at 25.8, JT's at 22.8, Harper's at 21.4, and he's only a 1/10 of a percentage point worse than Trey Turner at 19.3. For Nick Castellanos to be striking out at that much less of a rate now is remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, he's done a really nice job of centering himself. He's done a really nice job of laying off of the stuff down and away. Like we talked about last night, he's not swinging out of hand nearly as much anymore. And when you don't swing out of hand and you don't bury yourself in counts, guys got to throw you strikes. And he's taking advantage of pitches that are thrown in the zone. We talked about this last night too. His swing contact, or his zone contact rate is up. His barrel rate in the zone is up. And his chase rate is like, so if you just went to his baseball savant, you would go, wow, chase rate's still at the 5th percentile. He's still like flailing a lot. But if you watch him on a night-to-night basis, he's not flailing nearly as much as he was at the beginning of the year. Like, it's not that scene from Benchwarmers where, you go, it's not a sword, and that's where the sword comes from. The
Friedman sword stat.
Pitching ninja, right? He's not getting swords anymore. He's making good contact. His plate approach has been better. And I think his eye has been better too. Like we talked about last night, the 15 pitch at bat, the 9 pitch at bat. He's become a guy who isn't like, you have to have a better plan against Nick Castellanos than you did in the first 2 months of the year. The plan in the first 2 months of the year was breaking ball down and away, breaking ball down and away, breaking ball down and away. And until he adjusts, you keep going to it. Now you have to have a much greater depth of a plan when you're pitching against him, because he is producing at a high level and his at-bats have been significantly better.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. So wanted to point out his quick turnaround. And Matt Deckard in the chat, we're going to get to the Bryson Stott topic in 1 second, but I'm getting a little hungry, Tyler, and I got that growl in my stomach starting to kick up. I just slammed a piece of toast before the show. But what I need to do is get over to Rite Aid and to the ELO Market, because the ELO Market is like my go-to place before a road trip now, because they have candy, snacks. I said that weird. Candy. They got candy, snacks, and pantry items exclusively at Rite Aid. They got classics like peach rings and Starlight mints and gummy bears. I got to have gummy bears, and I got to have jerky on all road trips. If I'm driving, I need something to chew on, and those two are my go-tos. They got nuts and trail mixes if you want something packed with vitamins, minerals, healthy fats, fibers, and proteins. Popcorn, my girls love popcorn. Granola, plenty of pantry staples like honey and seasonings and things you might need when you're away from home. Snack Attack, get ELO Market delivered same day or buy online, pick up in store. Just go to riteaid.com/shop to order.
Yeah, and when you go to Rite Aid and you've got your snacks and you're feeling pretty good about yourself, the one thing that you can do when you have your snacks is save a little bit. And that's, of course, with our friends over at TrueMark Financial Credit Union. Now, I don't know if you know this, and I say you as in everybody hanging out with us today. The home buying process is a disaster right now. I'm going through it. My wife and I are trying our best to figure out what we can afford, where we want to live, what type of loan we want to take out. Are we eligible for first-time homeowner? All of this stuff. And it's really, really overwhelming. But our friends over at TrueMark Financial Credit Union can help me out because they have the mortgage specialist on hand that offer guidance in loan options and in terms. They help you assess your finances. They help you with your credit score to determine what your borrowing capacity is. That's the kind of thing that I didn't know until I started kind of getting into this home buying process was how much do I need to put on a down payment? What is my borrowing capacity? What are closing costs? Unforeseen circumstances when you buy a house and unforeseen costs that I just didn't know about because it's just one of those things that you kind of learn in real time. And our friends over at TrueMark Financial have done an awesome job of helping me kind of get a better understanding of what the housing market is, how I can navigate it a little bit better, what my buying power is. And they go so much further beyond than just your home buying process. They can do things as simple as helping you travel to Phillies away games. It's easy to keep track of your spending with the TrueMark Financial mobile app. The mobile app allows you to access your account anytime, anywhere. You can easily check your balance. You can view your transactions. You can pay bills right from the app, and you can make transfers. If your money's running a little bit thin and you're out on the town, let's say, you're in Arizona, for example, you need a couple extra bucks from your savings. You can easily transfer it with the TrueMark Financial Credit app. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit www.truemark.com/PHLY.
I have the America-Italy bronze medal volleyball game on in the background on mute.
Okay.
Tyler, my chances of returning one of these serves, I
Zero.
would say is almost zero. I might give myself throw my body and it hits my fat and pops up over the net or something. But yes, very, very much less than 1%. These are rockets.
Have you ever seen the gag video, Scott Sterling?
I don't know.
So there's two videos. The first one was soccer, and Scott Sterling was the goalie for a college team, and they went into penalty kicks. And the running gag is Scott Sterling keeps getting hit in the face with shots. and he's just more and more, he limps away. He cowers in the corner and hits the crossbar and hits him in the face. But they did a second one, which was volleyball. And it was the same premise, right? He's just getting hit in the face with the volleyball. That's the only way I'm returning a serve is it breaks my nose and falls down into a no man's land.
Yeah, these are absolute rockets these guys are sending. I was just well, you were telling us about the lovely people at TrueMark. I was like, I don't think I could return these. And I used to play a decent amount of volleyball in high school. That was our go-to. It was basketball and volleyball were the two games that were going on during your free periods. And we would get some epic volleyball games at LaSalle that were pretty great.
I think that there of the countless amounts of sports between winter and summer Olympics, there's probably 3 that I'm not saying compete at an Olympic level. I'm saying compete, period. I don't think I have any opportunity. Maybe you can figure out curling.
Maybe.
There's so many sports that I watch and I go, first of all, how did you get involved in this? Because it's such a niche sport that I don't know how it happened. And second of all, I'd be a disaster.
Real quick, while we're on the Olympics kick here, the basketball game yesterday was absolutely awesome. I was so happy for Joel Embiid to not only get that winning experience, but to be the pivotal turning point of that game.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers with Embiid and Jokic on the floor at the same time. Embiid was
cooked his ass. Better. Yeah, and LeBron and Steph Curry was just absolutely amazing. Even Skylar was watching it with me, and I was like, look at Steph. I was like, he's unbelievable. He had 14 points in the first 3.5 minutes. It was awesome. I am going to miss the Olympics when they're done.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Now, obviously with basketball and certain sports, we watch it on a much more nightly routine basis. I watched I enjoy track and field, especially the sprints. I think they're awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So I watch a lot of that outside of the Olympics, like college and stuff like that.
Oh,
but there's
wow.
certain sports.
I do not do that.
There's certain sports that are just really fun to watch that I don't watch all that routinely.
You locked in for the breakdancing finals today?
Like, that's one that I'm not in on. But I will say, like, the gymnastics, the coordination of the gymnastics teams are off the charts.
Oh,
Archery is wild. Like, anything with like long distance shooting, like the dude with the hand in the pocket, going out
the Turkish guy who was just like
anything that I don't watch routinely are the ones that I find myself watching the most.
Yeah, because you only watch it every 4 years. So.
Right. Like, I watch the NBA on a nightly basis. I watch Joel Embiid on a nightly basis. As I like, that game was amazing. But I've found myself actually gravitating towards kind of the lesser known sports over the last
that makes sense. All right. Matt Deckard asked it in the chat right before we told you about the lovely ELO market and TrueMark Financial. I said it last night in the post-game show. I know it's probably been discussed internally at this point. Brandon Marsh and Bryson Stott are going through some swing mechanic adjustments and changes right now, and they're trying to get right. You don't have to make the decision right now. Let's preface that conversation. But if the playoffs were to start tomorrow, Tyler, are you going a true second baseman platoon, or are you letting Bryson Stott and his experience kind of fight his way out of this?
Well, I think you have to pick your poison on which platoon you want, because there's definitively going to be one in the playoffs. And whether that is left field, if it's left field, center field, or second base, you're picking one. If I'm picking the platoon that I think is the most valuable to this team, I think it's hard to make that decision. I think
I have the most faith in Bryson Stott, I think, of all the options.
I think that it's really, really difficult to make that call right now. I think if you're looking for the best,
this is why I ask the tough questions, Tyler. All right, your ass is on the griddle, pal.
If you're looking for the best defensive pairings of the three, it's Marsh in left, Rojas in center, and Stott at second. Obviously, that would kind of parlay to, are there going to be offensive issues, especially if it's a lefty on the mound, because Marsh has struggled immensely against lefties. And, Rojas has been what we expected Rojas to be. Come playoff time, if the playoffs started today, I think that I would probably be in the market to go with, assuming he's healthy, of course, go Austin Hayes in left, Marsh in center. I'm trying to.
I think two platoons is realistic.
I'm trying to live time my thoughts, and I keep going back and forth on it. Maybe you do platoon two.
I think you're gonna have to.
It ends up being a second base platoon, lefty righty matchup, and then Marsh. To me, I would.
You might have three platoons.
I would go Marsh and Hayes platoon and Rojas in center for the defense. I will say this: Stott's numbers against lefties are far more palatable to me than Marsh's numbers against lefties. So if you're saying you have to pick one platoon, I think what they go with is Stott at second, Hayes in left, and a center field platoon. I
think that's probably what I would do. They want Hayes to take that. They want him to earn that job.
What I would do is probably going to change about 9 different times between now and then.
Yeah. It's a tough one, and as Steve Garrison in the chat points out, Bryson's about to have twins, so his house with 3 kids under the age of a year and a half or so, 2 years there. Going to be some sleepless nights in the Stott household. So hope he's got some good coffee ready to pull him out of this.
I'm sure that, the outside factors, it's just like any job, right? Like when
they're humans, this just in.
Right. When you have kids or, a family member has issues or whatever the case may be, your mind drifts. It's just going to be that way. We're human beings, and it doesn't matter what job you're in. They just happen to be professional athletes. I would think to an extent, it's got to be difficult as a new dad and a dad of about to be a dad of 3 under 2. Like, people say 2 under 2 is tough. I can't imagine 3 under 2. That's got to be difficult.
Yeah.
And weigh on you mentally and personally. From a baseball standpoint, I think that they feel comfortable with him like his defense is it's no doubt, right? We know how good his defense is. I think that come playoff time, if they had to make a decision, he's probably going to be closer to the everyday second baseman than one of the outfielders is to an everyday left fielder or center fielder.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I have a feeling he will be the starting second baseman come playoff time.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can pull out of this a little bit. Him and Brandon Marsh need to get it together a little bit.
Well, and I will say this. Rob Thompson a couple days ago talked about sometimes it's not about not playing Stott. It's more about playing Sosa and getting Sosa reps. Yeah. Sosa is closer to a platoon piece than I would have expected him to be when the season began. And I'm not sitting here saying I want. Yeah,
this isn't an all negative Stott conversation. I think it's a positive Sosa conversation as well.
Right, and I'm not sitting here saying I want him to play every day. We've seen him get overexposed when he plays too frequently. He's a really, really, really useful bench piece who can play multiple positions and give you a spell at 3 or 4 different spots. It's not necessarily all a knock on Stott. I think it's at the same token, I do think that Rob Thompson is very, very aware of getting Edmundo Sosa playing time. Yeah,
you might need him. All right, we're gonna move on to some other stuff, but real quick, I kind of since both of us checked out the PHNX post-game show last night, and I saw the comment section talking about Philly fans, this and that, and I just remained silent. I do think this rivalry is fun. Like, they're a fun team to hate. I don't have like an innate hate for them, but it's growing and it's kind of fun. So I like this Diamondbacks rivalry.
These type of rivalries kind of grow organically because of big series. Like, I think back to the last really good Phillies run. One team that always irked me, A, because they beat the Phillies in the 2010 playoffs, and B, because they won 3 World Series in 6 years. The Giants irked me for a really long time. Like,
Cody Ross.
I'm still not over Cody Ross. I looked at them as like a organically grown rivalry that eventually did die out because they went their separate ways. The Giants kind of were good when the Phillies stunk, and then the Giants now kind of stink and the Phillies are good. I think that this rivalry will eventually run its course. But for right now, it's fun. It's 2 good teams. It's a team that got really hot at the right time and used that to surge all the way to the World Series, who beat the team that was probably better talent-wise than them in a 7-game series. Then last time these 2 teams played, the Diamondbacks were really skidding, and the Phillies were, clicking on all cylinders.
Juggernaut.
Now the Diamondbacks are rolling again. They've won, 15 of 20 games since the All-Star break or something along those lines. They've scored a ridiculous amount of runs. Ketel Marte has been otherworldly. Both of these teams are good as of right now, and I think that's going to continue to play into the playoffs. There's a chance. I don't think it happens just based on seeding, but there's a chance that these 2 teams meet up again in the postseason this year. And it's become a fun, natural rivalry that, how long does it last? Maybe a couple more years. It's not like you said, it's not an innate hatred like the Braves. It's not an innate hatred like the Mets. But it's become a fun rivalry for sure.
Yeah, just taking a look at the playoff picture right now. Of course, the Phillies can become the first team in Major League Baseball to get to 70 wins tonight. They are very nicely tucked in at 69 wins. The Dodgers at 66. And then we talked about the Brewers and them just beating the hell out of the Braves.
Yeah.
They're at 65 and 49. I think there's your NL Manager of the Year right there. Right now, your 3 wild card teams, the San Diego Padres, the Arizona Diamondbacks, and the New York Mets.
Yeah, so we talked about the Brewers last night. I don't want to jump over the other probably hottest team in the National League. The Padres have been on a roll.
Yeah, they're 8-2 in their last 10. They've won 5 in a row.
Much better. Dylan Cease has been electric over the last couple of weeks.
That's what's in.
Michael King has been good this season. Matt Waldron, anytime you face a knuckleballer, you don't know what's going to happen. I believe, if I saw correctly, I believe Matt Waldron had the lowest RPM pitch of the last 15 years the other
That's
day.
great.
I think it was like 12 RPMs.
Isn't he the one that Patrick Mahomes was trying to throw the knuckleball in camp
Yeah.
or in OTAs? He was trying
Yeah.
to, yeah.
So amongst the teams right now that are contending for playoff spots, like you're starting to see teams surge ahead, and perhaps the three hottest teams in the National League right now are the three teams that are sitting in wild card contention. The Diamondbacks, the Padres, the Mets, and the Brewers have also been awesome for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, and the Padres are doing this without Fernando Tatis Jr., and he'll be returning.
Yeah.
I think I read something the other day that possibly towards the end of next week. I think they want to get him a rehab start. So they're going to get one of their best players back as well. And then just looking outside of the wild card right now, the Atlanta Braves are a half game back of the Mets for the final spot. St. Louis Cardinals 2.5 out of that final spot. And the San Francisco Giants 3 games out. Pittsburgh Pirates 4.5, Cubs 5 out, Cincinnati Reds 5 out. So all those teams in this new format, Tyler, 5 games on August 9th is not insurmountable. So I would say it kind of stops at the Reds. After that, you have the Nationals, the Marlins, and the Rockies, 3 very unserious franchises.
Yeah, I think the Nationals are going to cause teams some headaches down the stretch. We've talked about
they got a bunch of young, good players.
They're starting to put it together. I think they're still probably 2 years away from like legitimately competing, but they're really starting to put together a nice young core. Just real quick to go back to the Padres, and how they're doing this. 7 guys with 10 or more home runs. Not a single player on their roster has struck out more than 90 times this year.
Wow.
And that's Manny Machado.
I was going to say Machado's got to be up there, right?
Jerickson Profar.
What's Luis Ariz at? Like 12 strikeouts on the year?
13, yes. Yeah, 13 strikeouts.
I was mostly kidding. I knew it wasn't like a lot, but that's outrageous.
13 strikeouts. But Jerickson Profar has been awesome all year. Jackson Merrill might win.
Jackson Merrill's been awesome. He's your rookie of the year, right?
I think, it's tough because I don't know if voters are going to lean Paul Skeens because of how good he is.
He's going to get the Cy Young votes too.
Right. Shota Imanaga was in the Cy Young conversation, rookie of the year conversation for a while. But Jackson Merrill's been tremendous this season. They don't strike out. They put the ball in play. They've got a bunch of dudes who are up towards between 270 and 290. They're a dangerous team because they've played some really good fundamental baseball over the last 4 or 5 weeks. And the pitching's getting better, like we talked about. It's getting better as the season progresses.
Yeah, and they went all in very aggressively at the trade deadline, really bolstered their bullpen too. So, yeah, the Padres are going to be a little bit of a problem, but as we've seen in the past, the Phillies are not intimidated by them or their well, it's a gorgeous ballpark. I was going to call it stupid, but that would just make me look stupid. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. San Diego in general is pretty great. Yeah. So the Phillies set themselves up really nice, Tyler. Zack Wheeler on the mound tonight made a really strong kind of Cy Young statement his last start out. I'm really pulling for him. I know at the end of the day, Cy Young awards and MVP awards don't matter, but
they matter.
Yeah, baseball justice kind of says that Zack Wheeler deserves one over this 3-year stretch he's having. And if Paul Skeens is the guy that can give him the best run at it, I think Wheeler deserves it because he pitched the entire year.
I mean, listen, I think that, you can look at electricity. Paul Skeens has been –
he's going to win his. You know what I mean?
He's been off the charts good this year. I don't know what the Pirates' plan is for him. In terms of limiting innings.
That's going to be interesting with the playoffs on the line.
He's thrown a lot of innings already. And I say a lot, relatively speaking, for a young guy, especially how much they baby these especially young star starters nowadays. But he's been sensational. And the Pirates are in an interesting spot because they've played I think they've punched above their weight class. They're starting to kind of come back down to earth a little bit. I think they're 2 or 3 games under 500 right now. They have the tools to potentially compete for a playoff spot. I don't know. They went I shouldn't say they went all in. They bought at the deadline for the first time in a long time. They brought in Brian De La Cruz, and they brought in somebody else too. Who did they? Yeah. They brought in somebody else as well. I forget
pitcher,
who it was. Right? But regardless, they bought, especially with 2 guys that are not on contract years. They'll both be back next year. They've got a really nice young core. Pitching staff is coming along nicely between Skeens and Jones and Mitch Keller's pitched much better in this, after a little bit of a rough start to the year. I don't know what kind of path they're going to take with Paul Skeens moving forward for the rest of the season, because they do kind of still have an opportunity to be a playoff team.
Yeah. So it's a pretty interesting playoff push as you take a look at the picture. But if you missed it earlier, first time in 784 days, the Braves don't have a playoff spot. Very sad stuff. All right. So Zack Wheeler tonight is going up against Ryan Nelson. When I joined the Diamondback show yesterday, they certainly didn't feel great about Ryan Nelson. He has a 5. He's been bad at home this year, which is usually the inverse for pitchers, like you see with Christopher Sanchez, worse on the road, good at home. Ryan Nelson at home this year, 5.33 ERA. Opponents are hitting 3.03 against him. He's been slightly better since the All-Star break, but really nothing to get too excited about. You have him, who struggles in his home building, versus Zack Wheeler, who's pushing for a Cy Young. You got to really like the Phillies' chances tonight. And if they win tonight, I know it's a coward 4-game series, but you got to feel good about their chances of taking that 4-game series.
You've done what you needed to do to secure a series split at least. Especially considering the fact that this team is hot, like we've talked about, and the Phillies are starting to, kind of return to form a little bit. If you take tonight, the pressure is off you at this point, other than hoping to win a series. It is a difficult place to play. It's cavernous. I know Jordan Montgomery was talking last night about how for whatever reason, despite the fact that the roof is closed, it gets disgustingly humid in that ballpark.
Why is he wearing long sleeves?
And that was literally the top comment on the article. It was like, maybe take the long sleeves off, you weirdo.
Yeah, like what?
But it's a hard place to play at times.
Real quick on that, all the beat reporters, I think it was Corey Seidman tweeted about it, and Tim Kelly might have also. They said it's the hardest stadium to track a fly ball in, whether down on the field or up in the box. They said it's just really difficult there.
Yeah, it's not a surprise. I mean, it's cavernous. It's tall. Like, it's because of the retractable roof. It's really, really tall, or at least it feels that way because you're inside. The sight lines, like I'm not a huge fan of their center field batter's eye. I think it's a little bit difficult seeing outward. I got to imagine it's probably similar, not with the batter's eye, but seeing inward, it's probably tough as well. It's a hard place to play, and again, it's a good team that they're facing. They're catching them at a bad time because the Diamondbacks have surged. Josh Bell has been electric since coming over. Ketel Marte's been unreal, and they're doing this without Christian Walker, who's been hurt for a little bit now. If you can win tonight, especially with your ace on the mound, you set yourself up for a really good opportunity. All you have to do is win Saturday or Sunday, and you've not only won the series, but you leave a road trip, which started off, so ugly in Seattle in the first 2 games. You leave a road trip going 1-2 in Seattle, 2-1 in LA. That puts you at 3-3.
And by the way, Seattle easily could have been 2-1 had Charlie Sheen not gotten squeezed on a strike 3 call that changed the game.
Yeah, for sure. So you go 3-3 in those 2 games. If you go 3-1 in this series, you go 6-4 in a 10-game road trip that looked like it could have spelled disastrous after that first Friday night game in Seattle. If you go 6-4 on a 10-game road trip ever, I'm thrilled. If you go 6-4 on this 10-game road trip, to play a good Dodgers team, a good Arizona team, and a feisty Seattle team that doesn't score a ton of runs, but their pitching's elite. Like, I can't ask for much more than that.
No, you can't at all. I would have signed up for 3-3 in these final 6 games, and they're gonna exceed that. So that's great to see. And then Saturday is going to be a really fun pitching matchup if you like that kind of stuff. Local guy Zach Gallen. Have you heard that story before?
Once or twice.
Yeah, versus Aaron Nola. It would be great to see Nola go out there and get it done for you, but that's a really fun pitching matchup. And then Christopher Sanchez on Sunday versus TBD.
Man, TBD's getting a lot of work lately.
A lot of work.
So I'm trying to pinpoint who it might be. So, like, my guess would be that obviously they've moved Slade Ciccone to the bullpen, at least for now. And he's
Eduardo Rodriguez just came back, but I think he's due up on Monday.
Maybe he's available. I'm not sure. I haven't looked too far into it. We'd have to ask our friends over at PHNX, but
they didn't know yesterday when I joined the show.
I think at this point you have the advantage tonight. good pitching matchup on, what is it, Saturday, you said? Is
I would say the Diamondbacks have a slight advantage there.
Yeah, and then, Christopher Sanchez versus, at this point, it might be a bullpen game. It might be a guy coming off of injury, and Eduardo Rodriguez. I don't know who it's going to be exactly, but even with Sanchez's road numbers not being tremendous this year, you would think there's probably a slight advantage there. You're talking about having it, two of the last three in a series, and you won the one that you were looking at as probably the biggest disadvantage for you into the season or the series.
Yeah, Kolby Allard did a really nice job. John Peace in the chat, I'll have to see if they overlapped. I know they were close, at least at Bishop Eustace, but he said it would have been really cool if Tyler Phillips and Zach Gallen got to face off against each other. Did they cross over? Because I know Gallen's a little older.
Good question. I would just off the top of my head, I would say probably no. But I don't know.
But it has to be close, right? Let's see how old they are.
So Gallen's 29. And
Tyler Phillips is 25?
It's 26.
26. So they could have.
A possibility. I would assume that Phillips would have been like a
freshman when Gallen was a senior. Yeah.
So maybe Phillips wasn't. Maybe he was a sophomore.
Oh, John P. said, I think I read that Phillips said he was a sophomore when Gallen was a senior.
So my assumption is, my guess is, unless Tyler Phillips was like a guy who started being really good his senior year, if you're a major league pitcher, you're on your varsity team.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So my guess is that they probably were teammates in some capacity.
That's pretty cool. Imagine seeing one of your high school teammates on a major league field in the opposite dugout. That's got to be pretty surreal.
Hey, dude, how are you?
Hey, what's up, dude? You playing Call of Duty tonight? All right, cool. All right, Tyler, let's go down on the farm a little bit here, which we do weekly on the program. And we're not going to deep dive anyone in particular, but we are going to talk about some of the bigger name guys down there and what's happening. Now, Mick Abel was placed on the developmental list. Which, if you're unfamiliar with,
I gotta be honest, I have no idea what that is.
So it's a basically a non-injury pull off the roster spot in minor league baseball, where teams are able to put you into, a pitch mechanic change and fix. So you basically can pause on the season and do some developmental work. So he was removed from the developmental list yesterday.
Can I get that in our job? Can I just get
yeah. I'm constantly developing. I need some help.
Take some time off while getting paid.
So he was supposed to start last night, but the rains canceled that out. So I would imagine Mick Abel is making his first start in, I think, over 2 weeks, coming up here slightly after this hurricane weather front moves out of here.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously the stuff is still there. We all know that Mick Abel's got stuff. The command has consistently been an issue throughout his career. The walk rates are high. The strikeout to walk rates are low. This guy has the tools to be a major league pitcher. I'm not sure at what point is if or when there's a turnaround with this guy. I have kind of lost faith a little bit. I know that the people that cover the organization
still young enough. Yeah.
I believe that there is time. Again, like when you're looking at minor leaguers, it's not always a results driven viewpoint that you're looking at. Like if you see somebody who has a 4.5 ERA but they're striking out, 12 over 9, you're going to go, okay, that guy's got stuff. We're going to continue to monitor him. He's going to continue to progress through our system because the stuff plays. And I think the stuff will continue to play even into a major league arm. As he continues to falter, I got to imagine they're going to give him every opportunity that they possibly can for him to win jobs and for him to progress through the system. But I am starting to lose some faith that ever comes to fruition.
Yeah. As you said there, development is not always here, and some people need to see the dark before they see the light. So, of course, the story is not over with him, but this was perceived, I think, to be a pretty big year in his path to the majors. And it was, a step back a little bit. And the developmental list is, you never want to see what your top prospect paused for the developmental list reasons, but you can use it for a couple things and that is like mechanics changes. If one of your prospects is throwing too many innings and you just want to cool them down for a little bit and not overpitch them, you can use them for that. You can't use it for injury rehab, and you can't use it for disciplinary actions. So Mick Abel just got pulled off of that, and we'll see when we see him. But that should be coming up in the next couple days for sure. The Fighting Phils. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Really quickly, just to kind of dive into the numbers a little bit more. The regression numerically that worries me. Like again, we talked about it. The ERA is whatever. Like, obviously, I would love to see that come down. And the 7 ERA that he posted in Lehigh Valley this year is less than ideal. But last year, he threw 113 and a third innings, and he walked 65 guys. So he was walking about a hitter every 2 innings, a little less than that. But he was or a little bit more than that. Or no, sorry, less innings, more walks. But he was 65 walks over 113 innings pitched. This year, in 77 innings pitched, he's walked 58. His walks per 9 this year is 6.8. Now, his strikeout rate has continued to be strong. Now, this is the lowest it's been in AAA. It's 8.5. But over the course of his career through 4 levels, it's 10.5. But the issue becomes, like we talked about, a low strikeout per walk ratio because of the fact that he's walking too many guys. This year, it's a 1.26. So the stuff is still there, but the command has just been basically non-existent.
Yeah, not great. I would take stuff over command every day of the week, though. Hopefully they can help find that command. They have been very good at that with some of their guys lately. Wednesday. I think
time is a blur.
Yeah, time. Yeah, all these late night West Coast trips. I'm fried. The Fighting Phils had a day. So this was August 7th. They had 15 hits, much like the big league club last night. The Fighting Phils had 15 hits on Wednesday. Justin Crawford had 3 hits, a double, 2 RBIs. Otto Kemp has been having a nice season. Really 3 hits, 1 triple, 1 RBI, and then Gabriel Rincones, 2 hits, 1 double, 2 RBIs, and the Fightins had themselves a feast at the plate the other night.
Yeah, we keep talking about Justin Crawford, and rightfully so, because he's hitting the ball harder. His average continues to stay at 300 or above. The OBP is strong enough for advancement, and there's a reason why he has quickly risen through the ranks. I mean, he started last year in Clearwater, played 69 games in Clearwater, played 18 in Jersey Shore. This year, started in Jersey Shore, is up to Reading now, 13 games with Reading. I'm not sure, with what probably is about, I would imagine in Reading season, probably about 25, 30 games left of the regular season. I'm not sure if this happens in the beginning of 2024 or 2025, but there's a very realistic possibility if he plays well for the final, stretch of the season in Reading. There's a very realistic possibility that he might start the year in 2025 in Lehigh Valley.
Yeah, I would think so. Look, I have his game log here. My man's on a bit of a heater recently. Dating back to July 26th, he has games of 3 hits. This is a hitting streak. 3 hits, 1 hit, 1 hit, 1 hit, 2 hits, 2 hits, 1 hit, 1 hit. His average has been tremendous. He's got 6 RBIs during this hitting streak. And maybe the most impressive thing, only 3 strikeouts during this, 2 stolen bases. He got caught stealing once, but a couple doubles worked in there. He's never going to be a power hitter. So if he can become a doubles guy, that is the goal. Get that speed on the pass.
He's never going to be a power hitter, but he does have 29 extra base hits this year. He's got 19 doubles, 4 triples, 6 home runs. The doubles, I think, are paramount because he's going to cause problems on the bases, like you said.
I believe he's a 70 scout grade on speed. So he is.
I mean, he flies around the base paths, and he's a good base runner from what I've seen. Now, again, like this is when I say he's a good base runner from what I've seen, I'm not gonna pretend to you like I'm watching every Reading game, I'm watching every Jersey Shore game. But what I've seen from him, he seems to be a heady base runner. He knows when to take the extra base. He seems like he does a nice job on the base pass. And his OBP is high, partially due to the fact that he's hitting well over 300 this season. But he's got a 350 OBP. He's not going to walk a ton because I don't think a lot of guys are going to pitch around him in the sense that they do your more traditional power hitters. But I do think that if he can hit, as he continues to progress somewhere between 280 and 300, he's going to continue to fly up the ranks quickly because the tools are there. We know he's a good defender. We know he's a good base runner. If he continues to put bat on ball at a high capacity like he has through the minor league system, and that's why I'm kind of bullish on him potentially being in AAA as soon as early next year.
Yeah, it's definitely, he's a great kid, as we got to sit down with him in Clearwater, and he's highly rootable. He has a lot of tools that you'd like to see, applied at the next level. So obviously rooting for him. He's had an excellent year. He's answered every call, moving up the ladder. And then the final note from down on the farm, this was courtesy of Scott Lauber from the other day. You probably are familiar with the name Simon Muzziotti. The Phillies have released him. His slash line this year, 235, or is it Simone? I'm sorry. I think it's Simone.
Simone. Yeah. Simone.
Excuse me. Too many prospects in the brain. Simone slash line 235, 297, 373, had 5 homers on the year, 5 stolen bases at AAA. He is no longer with the organization.
So when I see a move like this with an outright release for a guy that was formerly on the 40-man roster, one of two things come to my mind. Either the Phillies kind of have gotten to a point where they do not believe he is a major league player on their team, at least. And I think that they may have had a tough conversation with him and said, listen, we do not envision you as part of our future plans. We will release you and, maybe you can go find greener pastures elsewhere. And maybe Muzziotti, maybe he asked for this. I don't know. I'm not, privy to the situation. The other thought is, because we've seen this with former Phillies before. We've seen this with former, MILB and MLB players. My other thought was, I wonder if he's drawing interest from international leagues, particularly maybe in like a Korea, where he may get an opportunity to play at a professional level and get paid potentially. I don't know. Again, this is speculation. This is what my brain is coming up with. I'm not like stating facts. I don't have any reports. I have no inside information. But when I see a player who was formerly on a 40, and yes, he struggled in AAA this year, just get outright released after the trade deadline, something's up in terms of the Phillies clearly just don't envision this guy as a piece of their organization.
Yeah. All right. As we're winding down and sending everybody into the weekend, let's just do a couple news and notes around Major League Baseball. One of the big ones yesterday, Tyler, a former Philly legend was involved in a big piece of MLB news yesterday as Grady Sizemore gets named the interim manager of the Chicago White Sox. Cool.
Did you happen to hear the story about Grady Sizemore last year?
I don't recall.
So Grady Sizemore wanted to get into an organization. I think he wanted to coach. I think he wanted to be, whatever his aspirations are. I think he wanted to get into an organization. And I forget what team it was, but I'll go back and double check. They didn't have any like organizational jobs basically left. So he took a $15 an hour position with the organization just to get his foot in the door. And so a lot of the White Sox fans are going, oh, $15 an hour. That works for Chris Getz. That works for the front office. He'll be cheap. This is an interesting hire because obviously no managerial experience. It's
kind of like they're just like in F this. Like, let's take a shot on the guy. Yeah, who cares?
I don't know what the future holds for that position. I would imagine it would be very, very weird that he would be brought in to. I can't imagine he gets the Jeff Saturday treatment where he's going to be a long-term manager.
I wouldn't think, but who knows? Maybe he turns things around.
But I see this and I don't really know what to think other than White Sox.
Yeah, White Sox. Other news: 44-year-old Rich Hill. Remember him? I remember.
I do.
Pepperidge Farms remembers. He is throwing for MLB scouts today.
Why? Why is he still just go retire? Go
he
enjoy
loves the game. Loves the game, Tyler.
By the way,
yeah, I can't imagine Rich Hill's going to contribute much to any playoff caliber team.
No. Sizemore, by the way, took a $15 an hour internship with the Diamondbacks last year.
Wow.
So here's the thing. Rich Hill knows how to pitch. We know Rich Hill knows how to pitch. He's been in the league for 20 years now.
24 years.
Not because his stuff is good, because he knows how to be a professional pitcher.
Sure.
What is he providing to a team that has playoff aspirations, right? Because if he went and said, hey, I'm signing with the Marlins, I'm signing with
what are you risking the arm injury for? You're 44.
I get it, right? So like for him to pitch, for him to throw for scouts, says to me he is not ready to hang them up and he wants to pitch for a contender. What contender is looking for 44-year-old Rich Hill?
That's a great question.
Zack
Eflin?
He's going to end up signing with the Pirates.
Yeah. Zack Eflin facing off against the Rays today, who traded him just a few weeks ago. We'll see what happens. That was a good pickup by the O's if he can stay healthy for them. But he's facing his old club today. Vlad Jr., we briefly talked about him earlier. Well, he's on a 20-game hitting streak, Tyler. Yeah. And during this time period, he is putting up absolutely silly numbers. He is batting .507 with 10 home runs and a 1.671 OPS during this 20-game hitting streak. My God, man.
Yeah, that's video game numbers. That's all that is. That's a video game. Those are video game stats. Like, you don't have a 1.6 OPS in the show on Road to the Show. He's been off the charts good. And maybe a little bit too late for the Blue Jays this year because they're pretty much out of contention at this point. It'll be a very interesting offseason. We've talked about this at the beginning of the year. We talked about it at the trade deadline. The Blue Jays are one of the more intriguing teams heading into the offseason because they've got a lot of talent between Vlad, and I know Bo Bichette's having a rough year, but Bo Bichette is should be a part of that core. It's an interesting time to be. I'd like to be a fly on the wall in the Blue Jays front office just to see what their plan is at this point. Yeah. It would be. I don't know what their long-term goal is, but Vlad is. If they do want to move him, he's
like 27, 28 now.
Probably something along those lines. He's really helping his own cause, though. I will say that.
I mean, we
know he's a good ball player, but
like all right, so let me look up how old he is exactly, because this is what kind of drives me nuts about some clubs, like the fact that he's only 25. Why would you trade him? Like, you've seen that he is good enough to build around. He's 25. He's just mentally, like, your brain isn't even fully developed until age 25. His prime can still be ahead of him. Why would you trade a piece like that? Like, I understand, like, sometimes you have to protect a cornerstone and build around it. And, I know he had his struggles this year, but you've seen over a large body of work that he has the possibilities to carry a club.
Oh, I don't think it's the right move to move him.
I know.
Like, looking at the.
But like, if you're the owner of the Blue Jays, why would you'd be like, no?
If you're moving Vlad, you're moving everybody. That's the thing. If you're moving Vlad, you're moving everybody, and you're restarting from scratch. You're going to move him. You're going to move Bichette. I don't know if Gausman has any contract left, but you would move Gausman. I know you've already you moved. Was it? Did they trade? Who did they trade? They traded Kikuchi, right? At the trade deadline.
Yeah, they traded Kikuchi and Kevin Biggio
and Garcia too.
Yeah.
But then they held on to some other guys that it was a weird that was like a soft sell.
They don't know where they are.
Yeah, it was like a soft sell for the Blue Jays. I don't know what their plan is heading forward into the offseason.
Yeah, but Vlad has been on fire. Flyers and 7 in the chat says best father-son duo ever. This is including the Bonds and Griffeys. Well, the Bonds and Griffeys, I would say the Bonds are probably better than the Griffeys because I think the dad was better than Griffey. Vlad was the best dad of the bunch.
Correct.
But Bonds was the best kid of the bunch, with Griffey damn close if he didn't get derailed by injuries.
Right.
That's a good debate. I don't know. Vlad's the best dad, but not the best kid, and probably definitely the third best kid of that group. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I loved Vlad.
I think before I like deep dived it, I would probably take the Bonds.
Probably, yeah, because you're safest with Barry, being
Right.
possibly the greatest ball player ever.
Or we could go. Of course, we could go Roger Clemens, Cody Clemens. Of course.
Oh yeah, of course. How can we forget that? Sometimes you find yourselves down sports YouTube rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Vlad Guerrero's arm. If you just want to look up some of his best throw compilations, it is absolutely awesome to watch.
So you know what's funny? I know we're getting out of here. Vlad Guerrero has been growing up was my favorite player. He is my favorite player I ever watched get to play the game.
Batting gloves, total
Vlad Guerrero, the way that Vlad Guerrero played the game was the absolute antithesis of the way that I played the game. Vlad Guerrero was a power hitter with a ridiculous arm who swung at everything because he could and was was an elite ball player. Was an elite, by the way, sneaky fast in the beginning of his career with the Expos.
He kind of had that bow-legged run a little bit.
Right. Whereas I was the lanky, not hard, contact hitter, noodle arm, everything that Vlad was, I was not. But I just adored watching Vladimir Guerrero play baseball. He's my favorite player of all time. I will always hold.
He's your favorite of all time, huh?
He is. Yeah.
Wow. I did not know that. I don't think.
Yeah. So he's the reason that when I was growing up, my AL team was the Angels, because when he went to the Angels, I started following them. And it lasted, I still root for them. They stink. The organization's a disaster. But they've always been my AL team because of Vlad.
Power of Vlad. Ken Griffey Jr. was one of my non-Philly all-time favorite players. And today, in 2001, Tyler, he hit his 450th home run of his career, becoming the youngest player in history, beating out Jimmy Fox by 15 days to reach that mark. He was also the youngest to ever hit 350 and 400. Just a damn shame that the injuries got to the kid as much as they did, because I did think he had a chance to be, the best ever, or one of. I loved Ken Griffey Jr.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think anybody of that grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, I don't mean like watching him. I'm talking about that. Like that was your childhood. You ascended with Ken Griffey Jr. like into your baseball fandom. He was your guy if you grew up in that era.
I got to see him play in the Kingdom. And what's funny was I went back recently and looked at that roster. And I know we got to get out of here, Tyler, because you got 6 shows to produce today. On that roster was a very young, I think 21-year-old Raul Ibanez on the bench. Got called up a little bit. The final notes here: Twins Guardians start a 4-game series. Twins, why that's interesting, the Twins are only 3.5 game back of the Guardians. So that is cool. And
who would have thought that the AL Central would be one of the most hotly contested divisions heading into the year, because you've got those two teams, Kansas City, people starting to look into why Bobby Witt is Superman at Kauffman Stadium. He's hitting like 400 at Kauffman this year, probably because he's just a really good baseball player. Yeah. But that AL Central is going to be fun to watch down the stretch.
Yeah. Final 2 notes. Aaron Judge on pace right now, potentially to get upwards of 66 home runs on the year.
Insane.
He's absolutely a freak. And I wanted to give a very cool local shout out to Alex Coffey. She is getting covered for the Diamondbacks series by another girl from the Inquirer, and she has sprinted over to Paris to watch her sister potentially bring home the gold medal on Sunday, which is very, very cool all around for Alex, her family, and the Inquirer family for allowing her to go do that. That is literally once in a lifetime opportunity.
Super cool experience for their whole family. Obviously, wish them the best of luck. Really, really awesome work by everybody around to allow Alex to get out there and get out there quickly. I think it's just a really cool story.
I can't imagine going out with my family celebrating my siblings' gold medal in Paris.
Local stories like that are always cool.
Wild. So cool. So to everybody hanging out with us, thank you. Hit that thumbs up button as you get out of here. Let's go Phils. They're officially back. Tyler and I have declared it. We went a little long today, but I hope everybody has a great weekend. Phillies are going to take this series. I feel it down in my plums. So for the rest of the day, we have Sixers coming up. We have Flyers coming up. And guess what? We got Eagles pre and post game show tonight. I am going to be with Bo Wolf and Zach Berman tonight for the Ravens preseason game. So we got you covered here at PHLY today. And thank you to our presenting sponsor, Bet365. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use that code PHLY365 at sign up to get $150 in bonus bets. Thank you to everyone. Tyler, good stuff. We will be talking over the weekend. Go Phils. And we'll be back on Monday morning at 11 a.m. Tyler, I'll see you then.
See you.